Mark Camilleri publishes Jorgen Fennick's WhatsApp chats in spat with Rosien Kutayar. A worker abandoned on the roadside after construction fall rejects the idea that Maltese are racist. And Carl Sanja Navarra apologizes to Lovin Malta journalists following collusion claims. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is Yannick Bach, with me is Bel de Jong, and we're going to be running you through today's top stories, starting with a story about everyone's favorite communist, Mark Camilleri. So as many of you probably know, Camilleri, the outspoken former National Book Council chairman, recently published a tell-all book in which he makes a number of claims about prominent Labour politicians, among others, including Labour MP Rosien Kutayar, who Camilleri has claimed had an affair with Jorgen Fennick, the man indicted for his role in the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. Yesterday, Kutayar said she was suing Camilleri for libel over the claims in his book, but this hasn't deterred the former Labour delegate, who has now doubled down on his claims. In a post this afternoon, Camilleri uploaded what appeared to be chats obtained from Jorgen Fennick's phone. The chats include conversations between Fennick and prominent businesswoman Diane Itzo, in which the two discuss Kutayar's speech in Parliament about the secret company 17 Black, which we now know belongs to Fennick. The speech was described as overly emotional by Itzo, with Fennick saying that he had received many messages from people who had made the same observation, including his mother, who he said had asked him whether the Labour MP had feelings for him. Camilleri has gone so far as to demand that Kutayar leaves politics for good, warning her that if she doesn't, he will become her worst nightmare. I don't know, it's quite a
big statement is being made. It's true, definitely. I mean, if these things are true, super messed up. On the other hand, though, I feel like it involves a lot, as in general with Maltese politics, a lot of blaming and claiming and not exactly knowing what is true and what isn't. So yeah, moving on though to someone who doesn't blame everyone else for his problems, Jaite Lamin, who was abandoned on the roadside after a construction site accident, a work accident, and instead of being brought to hospital, he was left abandoned on the side of the road. He has said in an interview with Lovin Malta that will be published tonight that Malta is not inherently racist and the Maltese are not inherently racist, but it is the fact that a lot of third country nationals do face systemic problems and that needs to be solved. He said Malta is a nice country, he appreciates it, he appreciates the people. However, he did hear a lot of stories from his friends, his family in Malta that did encounter racism. For example, his nephew came on Lovin Daily earlier this year, and he basically explained the daily racism that he faces in the country. The full interview will be published tonight, so keep an eye out for that. And tomorrow at 11 a.m. in Valletta, there will be a protest centered around the theme of there is no us and them, we are all us. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting observation and one that, I mean, obviously you can't speak for everyone and you know, every case, I suppose, is unique. But the statement that, you know, that the Maltese aren't inherently racist, but that, for example, we have a construction sector and an economic system that is based on the exploitation of migrants does resonate with me a bit, because I've seen, you know, more often than not, when someone enters a community, with time, you know, warm up to him. The Maltese, I don't find us to be an inherently racist country. Obviously, there are exceptions, but it's an interesting observation, and I'm very much looking forward to the interview. On to our third story. Labour presenter Carl Sanja Navarra has apologised to Lovin Malta journalist Tim Diacono after comments he made about the journalist during Wednesday's episode of Piazza. So Sanja Navarra apologized to journalists and said he should have been more cautious during the episode, which aired the day after another episode in which Sanja Navarra aired the supposedly secret footage of a sit-in protest currently being held by Republica outside the police headquarters in Floriana. The footage happened to be taken at a time when the Lovin Malta journalist was at the protest to report on what was happening. It also happened to be a time when two nationalist MPs were visiting the protesters, as well as a priest, which led Tanya Navarra to make the assertion that the footage showed a meeting of entities who had all declared themselves to be against the Labour Party. He was referring to the church, the independent press as a whole, the PN and Republica. The remarks were obviously condemned by many individuals across Maltese society, including the Prime Minister and opposition leader Bernard Grech. So to his credit, at the start of yesterday's episode, Tanya Navarra did read out a right of reply sent by Lovin Malta, obviously rubbishing the claims that Lovin Malta has in any way declared itself to be against the Labour Party. Despite the apologies, he did, however, stress that he had every right to speak out as a journalist, as he described it, insisting that he had never sought to incite hatred. He said any suggestion that this was the case was unacceptable. Now, obviously, the latest incident is by no means an isolated one. We all know that Labour Party's one, especially the programme Piazza, is often used to target government opponents, more often than not by spreading false information. That being said, the fact that the Prime Minister did come out and condemn the remarks could be a sign of perhaps things changes, though we must stress there's a long way to go.
Yeah, no, there definitely is a long way to go. And I think as a journalist, pulling conclusions from the first footage that you come across of some people being in the same space together should not be on your task list. That's not, I'm a fresh journalist, maybe I can't say much, but to be honest, as a journalist, I feel like it is your duty to see the different angles to the situation, to think further than the first video that you see, and to not jump to conclusions when you see people gather together. I mean, in the end, it was just a journalist doing his job and another journalist making claims about it. So, bit weak, not to throw shade, but anyways, moving on. Malta is going to triple its electric car outlets to 362 in total by the end of the year. Miriam Deli announced that there will be 130 extra charging pillars in the country, and currently there's just 56 of them. Which do have 102 charging points, as in every pillar would have a certain amount, usually 2, sometimes 4, sometimes 1 of charging points, and 56 pillars would be 102 charging points. The number of charging points barely increased in the recent years, which makes sense because there aren't that many electric cars on the island as we speak. However, it is cheap. It's just 70 cents per unit, and there's a discount for off-peak hours, so you pay more for peak hours, obviously. And there are more expensive fast charging pillows in case you're in a rush and you need faster charging. You can even connect your car to an app, which will let you know when you're out of charge, when you need to go charge your car. So it's all very efficient and useful. At the moment, there are around 8,000 electric cars in the country, and the government is planning to multiply that 8 times in 8 years, and they are aiming to have 65,000 cars in the country by 2030.
It's quite an ambitious target.
It is ambitious.
I mean, I suppose it does make sense. This is the way that the industry is moving. Hopefully, the charging points will be enough to allow most people to actually use these charging points. Onto our final story, civil society group Republica has filed a complaint with the Broadcasting Authority over what it claims are attempts to censor it by the national broadcaster. In an email to TVM's head of news, Norma Saliba, with the BA in copy, NGO President Robert Aquina flagged how a press conference by Republica held yesterday afternoon wasn't included in TVM's news bulletin. He told Saliba, quote, "Your newsroom didn't even have the decency to send a journalist to report our press conference for a TV station that should belong to all the people." In his letter, Aquina pointed out that TVM did send a journalist to the protest to cover opposition leader Bernard Grech's visit, but while the news reported Grech's remarks, there was no mention of Republica. It is clear that the only reason behind TVN censorship is to keep the public uninformed about a protest that they can attend. It is clear that TVM, in conspiracy with the Prime Minister, wants to stop the people of Malta from freely deciding whether to attend the protest. Quite harsh statements by Aquilina, who was obviously saying, the fact that there was no mention of the protest on the news meant that the national broadcaster was trying to hide the fact that there's a protest from the public. As we know, most people in the country still follow the evening news, and while there is obviously information online, the tendency for a lot of people is that they get the news from TV, which is why Republica are insisting that they be given coverage like everyone else. In fact, they said such censorship was unacceptable in any democracy. Republica's protest at Castile Square is at 6:30 p.m. tonight, and it will call for the arrest and prosecution of former Minister Konrad Mizzi on a number of corruption-related offences. So that's it from us for today. Thank you very much for following, and have an evening full of lovin'.